we got Rod Beard joining us. Rod, first of all, good morning. I'm sure the last 24, 48 hours have been super busy and exciting for you. How you doing, buddy?
This is why you go into sports. I'm doing pretty good. This is the reason that you go into sports, is for the unpredictability and just the idea that you don't know what's going to happen. A couple of days ago, I was on with Brandon on Woodward Pistons, and just kind of, I think you trust in Troy, and I think something's going to happen maybe next week. Maybe they figure something out, and that day is when the all of the news broke. So that's why you go into news. That's why you go into sports, is for days like this and times like this when something very surprising happens and the fan base is really exhilarated by it.
We're joined by Rod Beard, the assistant sports editor of the Detroit News. Rod, my guy, appreciate you joining the show. I got a lot of questions to ask you, and I want to start first with the process of hiring Monty Williams, because we know at first they pitched to Monty, he wasn't interested, but I know money talks. That's the obvious part. But what really made Monty, what was the final decision for Monty, or what made him finally think, you know what, I'll take the job? Was it Tom Gores and the persistence, him being persistent, or was it just simply Monty looking at the situation as well as the money and thinking, you know what, if I get 8 years here, I can build something here? Like, what was it specifically?
I'm going to say, Jeff, if somebody walked up to you and said, I'll give you $13 million to do just about anything, you could be a John Wick kind of hitman. And if you get $13 million for that, you're jumping up and you're doing it. I think the numbers ultimately were the difference maker in all of that. And maybe if the initial number was 9 or 10, then okay, I'm mildly interested, but that may be what the Milwaukee Bucks offered or what other teams were offering. But when you ratchet that up and say, hey, we really want you here, that's a difference. If somebody tells you no and you go back and you approach it a little bit differently, the money is ultimately going to figure itself out between the agents and between everybody else. But if you're really interested in this roster and really coming to make a difference here, I think that's the way that the Pistons pitched him, is that he's the key to all of this. And when you look at this roster, there are some pieces there that he could do the same thing or something similar to what he did in Phoenix and make this team a really, really good team. But don't mistake the impact of $13 million and what that could do to your decision-making ability.
Well, Rod, look, it's $13 million. I'm sure everybody is floored by the decision, record-setting number. But the basketball side of things, this is not a complete team. This is a team that's still waiting for Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, hopefully, to develop into an all-star backcourt. I asked Jeff, actually, before you came on, this same question, so I'll ask you. What does Troy Weaver need to do to ensure that by the second, or at worst case, the third year, the Pistons are at least a 44 to 46, 47 win team? And I know a lot of it is on development, but if you look at the depth on this team, it's a lot of players that should be sitting on the 9th, 10th spot of a roster, not playing 7th, 8th, 9th off the bench.
Yeah, I think what all of this does is it speeds up Troy Weaver's process. And if you get the coach that you want that internal development, but you've also got to go out and augment this roster with closers. And the old movie line, coffee is for closers. You need closers on this team. So the money they have available in free agency and under the cap, they've got to go out and get a closer. This isn't a crop of free agents where you're going to get that type of player who's going to be a definite difference maker by himself. So I'm looking more at a trade that's going to bring in the type of player that they need. And the logjam that we see among their big men with Bagley, with Stewart, with Wiseman, you've got to clear that up some kind of way to bring in guys who are maybe one bigger guy or one bigger contract guy. And I did hear you mention Bogdanovich at $20 million. The other piece of this is you don't have that guy, and you know it when you look at the salary sheet, because Bogdanovich is making $20 million, and there's nobody else who would make more than Monty Williams at $13 million. I mean, Cade is in that next kind of level of 9 or 10, but you don't have that next mid-level guy or that guy who can be that next kind of star to say, this is going to be the roster that is going to take us to that next level. You're just not constructed the way that you need to be. Now, when you renegotiate and you give Cade his second contract and you give Isaiah Stewart maybe his second contract, then you're going to start to see those salary numbers jump a bit. But that's where Tom Gores is going to have to step in, and they may have to go over the cap, and they may have to go into the luxury tax if they get to that point that they decide they're going to be a contending team. That's where you're going to need your team owner to really step up and write the checks and to do that. But for Weaver, he's got to go into talent acquisition, and it's not about this draft. The number 5 pick that they get is likely not going to start. He's not going to be a starter on this roster as they're currently constructed unless something else happens.
And Rod, we know Monty Williams, his success in this league with guards. He's worked with Chris Paul back in New Orleans. He's worked with Russell Westbrook in OKC. And we know what he did for Devin Booker as well. What does this mean for Cade and Ivey? Because we know they haven't been able to play a full season together. But what does this mean, Monty Williams, to be able to coach those guys, those 2 players? Does it speed up the process of them being able to play together?
Absolutely. I think it accelerates that, and we'll see them playing well. I don't know if it'll be in Summer League that we start to get a small sampler of that. But as the season starts, you're going to see them playing together and being a lot smarter. And people, the jury's still out for some people. I don't know why it is on Cade Cunningham. And after 27-7 in a small little window that he's played, I don't know why people don't think he can be take a big step and be an all-star caliber player as soon as next year. So having Monty there with him, I think is only going to help that.
I'll say this, Rod. One of my biggest frustrations over the years was there was no identity being built. I know Dwayne Casey, whether you want to say he got a raw deal or not, given the roster that was being constructed, how young the team was, there was no identity offensively, defensively. What can Detroit Piston fans expect from a Monty Williams coach team where night in and night out, win or lose, you know what you're getting from them?
I think it's going to be a similar style to what we've seen before from Casey. I think they're just going to have to do it better. And that's what Casey wasn't able to pull from them, was kind of this doing it better. There were always the turnovers, always the bad possessions. And that's going to happen with young players. I'm not saying that that's something that he could even control, but I think you're going to have to see more of that, him being the guard whisperer and really getting those guys to play at a high level. We were cheated out of that by Cade Cunningham's injury. We weren't able to see him play with Jaden Ivey, but the benefit was that Ivey was able to get some more ball handling and to be the featured guard in the absence of Cade. So I think those are going to pay off a little bit more next year.
And Rod, given the money they have to spend, or Troy has to spend, and given these players, Cade, Ivey, Duren, these guys getting a little better next year, I think a real expectation, at least for me, is at least 30 wins, or at least in that ballpark. We saw what Monty did with Phoenix. They went from 19 wins to 34 wins immediately when he got there. What are your expectations, number one? And does Monty change them at all, or was it just the same across the board no matter whoever they hired?
I don't like to get bogged down in number of wins, because it really is just throwing something at a dartboard. You can look at 17 wins and say, hey, if Victor Wembanyama wasn't the prize, would they have gotten a few more wins this season? Probably. A few more of those games might have gone a little bit of a different way. But there's going to have to be a step up in that. I'm going to say they're going to target 35 wins, because and ask me again after the free agency and after the draft and who they've gotten. But I think Troy really gets creative. We've seen what he's done in previous drafts to get additional picks or to get additional players. And I think that's what he's going to have to do this time, because this roster, as constructed, isn't a playoff team, isn't a play-in team. You're going to have to add something very significant to make this more palatable for Monty to try to accelerate that growth, and for them to be a contender in any kind of way, contender for the play-in even. They're going to have to add some more pieces to that.
Rod, I'm looking around the Eastern Conference, hell, around all of the NBA, and I'm trying to find a trade that would make sense for Troy Weaver and also make sense for the opposing team. And the only team I can really put my thinking cap on here and try to make it make sense is I'm looking at Chicago. Lonzo Ball's future is really, really in question here. They're not a contender. They're nowhere near it. The hell, they're paying Zach LaVine way too much money. I'm looking at a 33-year-old DeMar DeRozan's got 2 years left on his deal. Yeah, he's getting paid $27 million. But this is a guy that, again, taking about 15, 16 shots a game for his career. He's not going to be a ball stopper. Is he a player potentially that could fit if I package, let's say, a Bojan Bogdanovic, a Marvin Bagley, and maybe that 5th overall pick? Is that too much of a cost to go out and get a DeMar DeRozan who steps in day one? He's your clear number 3. He gives you that closer that you were alluding to earlier on, and I think the Pistons are probably 4, 5, 6 games better, even without Cade in the lineup, just with DeMar DeRozan. Is that something possibly, or is there anything else you're hearing maybe around the NBA or with the Pistons that there's a player they're interested in?
Yeah, there could be something like that. I think you need a 20-point plus per game scorer, and the concern I have is that he's not a 3-point shooter which is kind of what the offense would be predicated on. And I don't know if his game kind of meshes with Cade's the way that you want to. You need between those three, between Cade, Ivey, and DeRozan, you would need a premium 3-point shooter, I would think. And I'm just trying to get some contract numbers. He's at 28.6 next year. That's not a lot more than what you're paying Bogdanovich. So I think that's a fair one. I would think about that. And given the connection between DeRozan and Dwayne Casey, I could see that might be something that they consider. But I think DeRozan's the guy. You need another piece before DeRozan to kind of – DeRozan will be the solidifier. He's your other scorer that you need. I think you need a plus-level talent, maybe a little bit higher than what DeRozan can bring you. But I like where your head is. I think that's the direction that they would try to look at some point.
And Rod, I just need your help here. All right, I need you to clear some of these things up for me because I do, and I go to the voice of reason, Rod, for this. Okay, the whole narrative that Troy only wanted Kevin Ali and this was Tom Gore's decision to go get Monty Williams. Can you explain that a little bit? Because people forget that Monty and Troy have worked together in OKC. What was the I guess philosophy for Troy in this instance? Was it, I don't think we're going to be able to get Monty, so Kevin Ali's my guy, or is it simply Kevin Ali's my guy no matter what? How did that work with Tom Gores and Troy Weaver with picking the coach?
Well, my understanding was that I think everybody would have wanted Monty no matter what. Okay. And if the initial kind of ask and it was, no, I'm not really interested, then you bring in your other guys. And so if they're interviewing Kevin Ali, they're interviewing Charles Lee and Jarron Collins earlier, then it's, okay, well, here's our list. That's Troy's job, is to assemble a list and really have a list ready at any time because you never know. So I think those are the initial three that they started with. And again, the misnomer there was that those were the only three. Those were the finalists at the time. And that wasn't exactly it. It was definitely those are three that they're considering. But you never know because Budenholzer is still out there. Nick Nurse wasn't coming here. And you have Monty Williams. So once that turned around and it was, well, hey, maybe we can go back and make another run at him. Then it was, well, Monty's always on that list. I don't want anybody to get that twisted at all. Once Monty became available, he was on every team with an available coaching position, and maybe some that didn't have an available coaching position. That was the guy that they wanted. So the Pistons, and I tweeted this yesterday, credit Tom Gores for doing whatever was needed in getting a coach. And people bag on him for a number of reasons, and I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong. But all you can ask from your team's owner is to, when you need a check written, that he writes the check.
Right.
And that's it. That's it. It's just like being a parent. If your kid needs a computer or something else to do better in school, your job as a parent is to go and make that thing available for them, put them in the best position to succeed. And Tom Gores did that. So like him, don't like him for his politics or for whatever else he does in his businesses. As a basketball owner, he did the best possible thing that you could do is shelling out the money and record money for you to get the coach that you felt like you needed.
All right. Well, Rod, I can't thank you enough for joining us this morning. We appreciate it so much. It's good times to be a Pistons fan. I have hope now.
Anytime. You got Jeff out here who's a superstar. Jeff is the man.
Jeff dodges me every day, Rod.
No,
you should
Rod,
imagine what I have to deal with when I work with him.
Don't do this.
Dude wants eggs made for him before he walks on the set.
Yeah.
We do our production meetings the night before. He doesn't show up. He's like, oh, I'll talk about whatever. I'm ready. Like, it's impossible. The guy's a diva, making $50 million a year over here, killing us.
Diva Jeff is the best Jeff. You got
Bro, just like on the show. Just like on the show, Rod.
He's got to have people. He's got to have people fanning him. He's got to have grapes peeled. His strawberries have to be sliced in the morning. That's 100%.
Rod, did you tell him about when we went out to dinner?
Oh, don't do this.
The celebrity that Jeff was?
Don't do this.
Okay, we went out to dinner. I'll make this really quick. We went out to dinner, and we walked in the restaurant, and they're like, "Oh, it's Jeff," and
the girls already knew him. The white staff already knew him.
Where the hell did you guys go?
Norm. It was
P.F.
This was
Chang's
P.F. Chang.
Somerset.
We saw Maddie. Maddie from
okay.
So they're acting like
that doesn't count.
They're acting like
right?
I'm signing babies.
Does
Like I'm not signing. It counts.
That absolutely counts because we walked in And it was like he was Norm from Cheers. It's like, hey, everybody's like lifting up a glass and they're ringing the bell. Hey, Jeff's here. Well, okay, fine.
Well, you know what?
Fine.
I'm happy you're here, Rod. I'm happy you joined us today. All right, you can catch Rod, Woodward Pistons podcast, Kool-Aid Rod, and when I can make it. I'm sorry, Rod. I'm not Hollywood. When I can make it, I'm on the pod as well. But thank you for your time, Rod. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Rod. Thanks so much.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
Kool-Aid, stick around. I want to snag you for